So my name's Anna, and I'm from Barwon Child, Youth and Family. So we work in partnership with the Sexual Assault and Family Violence Centre, and we've got John here representing them. Our catchment area is the Geelong region and some of the surrounding suburbs in that area. I'll kind of just try and touch on points of differences to what other presenters have spoken about. So one of the differences that we've come across in our work within the Step Up program is that we found it really important to create a strong relationship with the Orange Door. So the Orange Door was rolled out across the state, and we have tried to develop a really strong partnership with them to ensure that they understand what our program is, what it does, and ensure swift referrals through to our program, so that when there's an L17 and the respondent is someone is listed as under the age of 18, the Orange Door can consider an integrative response that considers the role of the young person in that space to ensure that they're getting proper support. Another thing that we've been trialling and implementing over the past couple of years is work with Deakin University. So as part of our role, we were looking at the different types of violence that young people use, why they use violence and how that presents. So what we did was partnered with Deakin to try and explore that a little bit further. And some findings that came out of the work with Deakin was that there's different types of violence that these young people are using. Some young people are using violence that's more reactive. So for example, they might be triggered by something and have a really big emotional response that they don't know how to contain or control, and it comes out in violent behaviour. However, there's also a subgroup of young people who have what are called high amounts of callous unemotional traits. So these young people really, really struggle with empathy and with understanding the thoughts and feelings of others. And the types of aggression that they use can tend to be more proactive. So instead of having a big emotional response and not knowing how to manage it, these young people can be quite active in seeking out and using threats or using quite manipulative tactics to try and get their needs met. So as a program, we were really interested in how to respond to these two different presentations of violence, mainly because through the work with Deakin, we realised that these two types of violence actually need quite different responses, because obviously for the children who are high on callous unemotional traits, the lower levels of empathy mean that they don't, it's a lot harder for them to really understand the impacts of their behaviour on the parents or other people in their family. And so Deakin has been focusing on what kind of interventions can we use with this subgroup of young people. So some things that have been identified was focusing on rewarding positive behaviour and looking at pro-social behaviour, as well as targeting empathy development and making sure that parents are responding with warmth to these young people to try and fill in some of the deficits in those areas. The other part of the work with Deakin was exploring the interventions for younger users of children using family violence in the age brackets of 10 to 12. So we were getting lots of requests for support for younger age groups because obviously there's that need for early intervention and recognition that getting these young people support earlier is really, really important. But then obviously there's additional challenges with that because young people don't necessarily have the metacognition skills and are still developing theory of mind and other things that are needed to really understand some of the concepts. So we've had to be quite creative in how we tailor our intervention for that younger age group. Another point I'll just touch on quickly was that as part of the Royal Commission into Family Violence, Recommendation 128 suggested that youth justice group conferencing merge with the Adolescent Family Violence program to be able to deliver a program in that space. So basically, youth justice group conferencing is a little bit different to what Step Up is offering on its own, as it provides a very structured meeting and assessment with the parents and the young people, aimed at helping the young person understand the consequences of their behaviour on the people in their family, and kind of using structured meetings, getting the opinions of both the adult and the young person in that space. So we did trial 3 what are called restorative family meetings in that space, and we had some positive feedback associated with those 3 cases that were trialled. Some of the other presenters touched on group work, so I'll only go over it briefly. But basically, similar to what has been spoken about, we have tried to use really creative approaches in group work, and especially because in our group program we had young people from 10, I think right up to about 16, 17 in our last group program. So the strategies and things that we were using had to be flexible to encompass that big age difference. So we focused on using games and play-based strategies to help teach the content in an engaging way. And we were also trying to be really creative in terms of using the information that we'd gained from Deakin about callous unemotional traits, and considering how we could kind of change our intervention depending on the dynamics of the young people in the group. So by seeing the level of callous unemotional traits, we were kind of able to consider that perhaps one of the weeks in the group, the week that was focusing on empathy, wasn't going to be that effective with this particular cohort, because they all scored quite highly on callous unemotional traits. And for them, trying to teach empathy in 1 week, we felt just wasn't going to do a lot for these young people. So we had to be a little bit more creative. And what we kind of came up with was, instead of trying to get them to reflect on how changing their behaviour could better other people, kind of getting that internal focus. So why is it better for me not to use violence? And that was something that we explored and did have high engagement with those young people in that session. So I'll throw it over to John quickly.
I'm from the SAFV Centre, as Anna mentioned. I think one of the things that we bring is 40 years of experience in the family violence and sexual assault area, therapeutic services and crisis intervention services. And we heard this morning from the PIPA report about the acknowledgement of the level of trauma in young people who display family violence in the home, and also the need for family-focused responses. And we've gained a great deal of experience over the years in child-focused whole-of-family approaches, childhood development, knowledge of trauma and attachment and complex trauma, and intergenerational trauma and its impact on families. We've also had in the last 12 years the SAFVC program, which I've been involved with as well. So what I provide and what the SAFV Centre brings to the partnership also is clinical supervision to the case managers to bring some of that learning into that clinical supervision space, and reflective practice sessions, which I'll just put up a model there. It won't go into it. You can have a look at it later as you wish, or you can give us a call or have a chat to us after about that. But I think it's important to mention that for me, I think 3 primary pillars of the reflective practice approach in order to develop practitioner skills and improve interventions are sound theoretical knowledge, practitioner knowledge of self, because we as practitioners are the most important tool when we're talking about therapeutic interventions with families, and the other is direct practice. So those 3 things in combination work to bring professional development and enhanced practice. The therapeutic reflective practice sessions bring those 3 elements into the room in a facilitated, interactive, reflective space for the development of the practitioners and the bringing in of that therapeutic knowledge and skills into the work. And I think that's probably all we've got time for.